Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" In part 6, I mentioned that the disciples asked Jesus 3 questions. Indirectly, this is true, but I am inclined to think that the second and third questions are connected. In other words, the sign of his coming is also the end of the age. Not this age, but the age of law preceding this one. At the time they asked Jesus these questions, they were still in the age of law. For clarification, see Galatians 4, verses 1 through 5. Many believe that the disciples' reference to the sign of his coming and end of the age speaks of something in our future, most often called the second coming of Christ. But is this really the case? Have we not discovered that his coming as the Son of Man satisfies these questions? Isn't this the day that Paul said would test each one's work of what sort it is? Think about it. Paul said this day would come after the falling away. He also said that the man of sin and son of perdition would be revealed. Tradition wants to make this a superhuman individual called the antichrist, rising up sometime in the future and deceiving multitudes. This, of course, means that we are not deceived at this present time. Really? Approximately 41,000 denominations across the world, and yet we are not deceived? If this is the case, then my next question is, who's teaching the correct gospel? See why I propose that the falling away began long ago, and this in accordance with the prophecies to the 7 churches? But please, don't take my word for it. Let's go back to Matthew 24 and see what Jesus followed with. "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." Who is Jesus talking to? His disciples. So when he says, "They will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake," then he's referring to those who were with him at the time. And everything he says after that refers to the same. So, to endure to the end means to endure to the end of the age of law as it transitions into the age of grace. This is confirmed by the Lord's statement, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." Friend, the only true gospel of the kingdom is the one Christ delivered to his apostles. Since that time, it has been diluted, perverted, twisted, and reconstituted into a gospel of fear and ugliness, which has no resemblance to the original gospel that Jesus and his apostles embraced. After all, what does falling away really mean? If I sound harsh, then we need to reconsider what Paul wrote in the following. "For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths." Strong words, right? And Paul said this 2,000 years ago. Do we think it's yet to come, or might it have already come to pass by now? Look at what Paul said to Timothy shortly before he said this. "But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people." More strong words, right? And did you know that the last days began with the day of Pentecost? How do we know? Because after this spiritual phenomenon took place, Peter stood up with the 11 and stated, "This is what was spoken by the prophet Joel, and it shall come to pass in the last days, says God." But everything we're discussing is a matter of prophecy. What Jesus told his disciples in Matthew 24, prophecy. What Paul told Timothy in the church in Thessalonica, prophecy. What Jesus told the 7 churches, prophecy. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Now, let's go back to our passages in Matthew 24 and consider what Jesus said after the end would come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. See the word therefore? This connects what Jesus says to what he had already said, meaning that the abomination of desolation falls within the context of what Jesus described between Matthew 24:4 and 24:14. What is this abomination of desolation? Most believe it refers to the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD, while others believe it has a dual fulfillment and includes a future antichrist scenario. I lean toward the latter, but have a different perspective of the antichrist idea, connecting with the man of sin and son of perdition in 2 Thessalonians 2. Where tradition sees the man of sin and son of perdition as an individual, I see it as the carnal essence, which simply refers to the inordinate love of the self. How do I arrive at this idea? I get it from the following. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. Where is this abomination found? In the holy place of the temple of God. Who is the temple of God? We are. So what is the holy place? In the literal temple, this is the area where the golden lampstand, table of showbread, and altar of incense are found. Might these typify Christ as the light of the world, the bread of life, and the essence of prayer within us? Might this refer to the mind of Christ as opposed to the mind of the flesh? When compared to Proverbs 6, could the mind of the flesh be the abomination of desolation in the holy place, since the 7 things described are an abomination to him? Compare this thought with the following. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Who is the temple of God? We are. Who sits as God in this temple? The man of sin or son of perdition, said Paul. Might this be why Jesus said, "Not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down"? Could this be why Paul said, "I am crucified with Christ? Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me"? That's it for this study, but be sure to join me in the next. And thank you for being a part of Grain of Wheat Publishing.